CAGNY's first tech career panel. We've got 4 awesome Korean American folks in tech who volunteered so generously. So yeah, we'd love to dive into what they're doing and just share their experiences, and hopefully we can learn something from them. And I also want to thank you all for coming to this event. This is the first event in the series that we're going to do, and this is a great showing. And I want to actually, so I'll be honest, there was a bit of a change in terms of like who we were targeting. Originally it was students, but obviously timing-wise, a lot of students are gone. So I'm just curious, who here is not in tech, by show of hands? Okay, so most people actually are in tech, are in the industry. All right. There was this in the back. Okay, behind my brother. All right. So I will. That's fine. We still want this to be. It'll still be hopefully very informative. Just going to tweak some of the questions. That's all. All right. So yeah, by the way, I'm Lester Kim. I am just recent volunteer for CAGNY, trying to get more second generation and youth Korean American involvement in the greater New York area. And I've been working in tech since 2014, and I've mostly in startups. But so I have some background to moderate, but the focus will be more on our lovely panelists today. So I'm going to just kick it off. We're going to just start from right to left. Just very briefly, can you just introduce yourselves and talk about your positions, and yeah, just quickly we'll start with Jangwoo.
Yeah, of course. Hi everyone, I'm Jangwoo. I'm a software engineer at Google. I'm a recent grad, and I do language modeling and search.
Hello everybody, my name is Monica. It is my first CAGNY event, so I feel very honored and grateful to be here, so this is super exciting. But basically, I'm a program manager at a startup called Bubble, so software as a service is our specialty, so drag and drop, website building, that's kind of the name of the game of what we do at my company. And I basically started off my career at a startup a couple years ago, so post-grad, but I'm a grad of Georgetown University. Any other Hoyas in the room, maybe? Okay, deadpan silence. But we love DC. So anyway, that's where I graduated from, and super happy to be in New York City today.
Hi, my name is Susanna. I'm a product designer at Thrivent. I've been working in the industry for about 5 years. And yeah, I've always been in the New York area. Went to school at Pratt. Excited to be here.
Hi everybody, my name is Saej Chung. I am an accessibility analyst on the Chrome team at Google, and I'm originally from Chicago. I've been in the industry since 2020, so I'm relatively new, but I'm learning a whole lot.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, as you can tell, we have a lot of, it's interesting because everyone's relatively new early in their careers. So I find that really interesting because that's just the tech landscape, as we all know, evolves so quickly that even like what it takes to get a job can be quite different in terms of what sort of skills. There are people who are constantly, I come from a software engineering background, so people talk a lot about how your skills can deprecate over time and become stale, so you always got to keep current. So so then I'd like to just dive a little bit deeper for each of you, talking about just a little bit about your background before your current position, like how you got to where you are, and how you got to yeah, a little bit before before your current position, and then how you got into your current role right now. So and yeah, we'll just start with John.
Yeah, so I studied computer science. So I actually did 3 majors in undergrad. I did computer science, applied math, and linguistics. I actually came in as an international studies major because I love languages. I thought, oh, languages, international. I think I had the kind of like
from Korea.
Sorry,
you were.
Oh, sorry. No, I did undergrad and masters at Hopkins.
Oh,
yeah. but I came to States in high school, so I had that kind of like a like Korean mindset when it came to like choosing majors. And then I came in and realized, oh, I actually like the structure of languages, not really like literature. So I kind of pivoted to CS, and that's ever since it was kind of easy to it was easy to determine that I want to go into software engineering.
Interesting. It was easy for you to just move over. You came from like kind of what it sounds like is you started out as someone who's kind of more into the liberal arts and literature, and then you easily transitioned over into like computer science and something that was very
right. Yeah. So it's like the first couple of weeks into college, I took like politics and economics, and I thought, oh, this is not for me. Yeah, and then I took ACS 101, and I thought, oh, like logic and like breaking larger problems into smaller steps, that's what I want to be better at. And then I kind of very naturally transitioned into, oh, there's something called NLP, which stands for Natural Language Processing. And initially I thought, oh, it's going to be more about like structure of languages and how we computationally kind of process human language. But then it was less about natural language and more about processing, which kind of brought me into, like math and more of the quantitative fields. And once I switched majors and kind of went into the NLP route of things, I really didn't kind of think about anything else but software engineering.
So even within software engineering, down to computer science, it kind of, because of your background, you're interested in language and linguistics, it kind of naturally led into interest in AI. Is that correct?
Right. Back then I wasn't like I didn't really know much about AI or machine learning. I think natural language processing could be anything from like text processing, speech processing. There are many different fields within NLP. So I just took courses in NLP and then kind of wanted to do a PhD, but then I saw, oh, I'm probably not smart enough to do a PhD. So I kind of dropped that and then did more of like a product type of work in the industry, like internship-wise. I did 2 internships both on product teams. First one at Instagram shopping, so very product focused, commerce
Instagram,
focused. Right? Yeah, Instagram shopping. And then second one on Google search, but kind of more on the side where you actually see things on Google and less about like infrastructure. And then, as I transitioned into my full-time role, I was kind of matched to this team that does language modeling because most of my coursework were in NLP and language processing.
So you started out as an intern at Google and then were able to transition over?
Yes.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Yeah, so that's how I ended up doing language modeling at Google.
Awesome, that's a great story. I'd love to, we'll circle back and dive into it. Yeah.
So I graduated in 2020, and I don't know about you guys, that was definitely a hallmark year for a number of reasons. Most notably, I think the job market was not ideal for fresh grads. So I think just coming to terms with what opportunities were available for me, honestly, was a really difficult balance to strike in terms of what I wanted to do on a personal level, but also on a professional level. What does that even mean for me? Because I've never really forayed as an adult into the workforce. So it was a lot of self-reflection, I will say, during that time of my life. But I would say I just kind of naturally stumbled into the tech industry because I think just personally speaking, I had a natural inclination to be really interested on, cutting edge things that were happening and advancements that were taking place across the world. And so I think just naturally speaking, technology has those chances for people who are interested in that, right? So I started off my career technically as, I think culturally it was a startup environment, but very much not so operationally. But it was an online telehealth company called BetterHelp. So I don't know if you've listened to any podcast or watched any YouTube video, but they literally stuffed their podcast advertising or their social media advertising down people's throats, so you definitely could not have missed it. But I was doing social media / content creation for them. And that for me seemed like a really good fit just because I felt creatively minded and it seemed like a very cross-functional effort. So it kind of seemed to tick a lot of the boxes for me. But I quickly realized actually it wasn't as good of a fit as I wanted because it was completely remote and all my coworkers were based in Mountain View, California actually, while I was based on the East Coast myself. So that was definitely a shift that I had to straddle as well. But eventually I wanted to do something that was a lot more involved with people. So I was thinking, just thinking about what pivoting could look like. Just for anybody else who's never pivoted or has pivoted in their careers before, it can feel like a life or death situation for some reason, just figuring out that something is not as good of a match as you once thought it was. But I'm telling you, as just a piece of reassurance, you'll survive. It'll be okay.
Wait, Monica, so how would you describe this role? Was it BetterHelp?
Yeah, BetterHelp. So basically, I was on a 10-person marketing team, 2 of whom were basically solely devoted to organic channels. I was basically part of a 2-person team.
What was your title there?
The social media coordinator. So I was the person in charge of creating content and scheduling things out, organizing all that stuff for all of our social media channels. So TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, you name it. Yeah, so that's essentially what I was doing. And so just think about what else could be a better fit for me in terms of more people interaction. I was thinking, I feel like talent acquisition is a really great means for involving yourself more with people in a hands-on way. So that's kind of what I wanted to gear towards for the next step of my career. And so I entered into talent acquisition / HR at my current company called Bubble, as I mentioned earlier. So I started off in HR / people processes and operations, and then more so recently, within the past couple of 4 to 6 months, I transitioned into this program management role. Again, with the theme and the idea of wanting to have more so of a people piece within my overall day-to-day operations. So I wanted a little bit more creativity when it came to, again, managing programs and projects along those lines. But then talent acquisition also had that, at least for a good entry point. So that's kind of how I've meandered my way to my current role.
So how is that pivot? So that was a pivot internally within Bubble, right?
Yeah.
How big a shift was that in terms of the responsibilities?
Well, okay, so this is kind of the cool thing about startups. You can do a lot in terms of getting away with a lot as long as you know the right people and have built good relationships. So I think there's more of an impact and an opportunity for you to pave the path that you want for yourself in your career in smaller environments that have less red tape. So I think that was definitely true of my experience at my current company, because it was just a matter of, hey, there's a need for this kind of role at our company, there's a vacancy there, and you've already had built up so much goodwill across all the other teammates across the Bubble that we think actually this would be a really good fit for you. So that's kind of how those conversations occurred.
Awesome. Wait, in a nutshell, how would you Bubble's still a startup?
Yeah.
How large is Bubble and?
Yeah, so
what
my
does
company Bubble, it's a Series B startup, and we raised our last series of funding about 3 years ago at this point, but we're roughly around 150, 160 total.
Well, thank you. Let's move on to Susanna. You forgot. So just your background before your current role, and then just a story of how you landed where you are now.
Okay, so I had a little bit more of like a traditional pathway into my current role as a product designer. So I studied communications design at Pratt with an undergrad in psychology, but I pursued a visual design career at first. So I was really fortunate to have a internship at a startup 2019, and then they kept me for like longer. So I was a part-time student my last year at school, and I was essentially working full-time as a designer. But within this role, and like Monica said, there's a little bit more like flexibility in startup culture. So I found a little opening for me to step into a product design role. And
So what was the name of what was your title then again? So,
oh, I was a visual designer. So just
visual designer.
yeah, but like plain on paper, it's just designer. That's how I kind of like pivoted into a product design space. With the design director at the time, I had a very transparent conversation. Was like, I'm really interested in the work that you guys are doing, and I want to be more product focused. So we kind of created an agenda for me to be mentored and then just learn while on the job. And that was really helpful because those aren't technically the skills you learn at school. So just learning on the job and like continuing to enhance and like work on the skills outside of work, but also like applying it while you're working really helped. And then to get to my current position, I was actually recruited because of my experience at a startup. So they wanted someone who had more marketing focus but visual design background. So I kind of naturally fell into my current position. And considering it's like a very large corporation, they actually operate like a startup because the design team didn't exist prior to 2020. So we're kind of in this very, I guess this is like our company's buzzword, but it's like nebulous time of building everything from the bottom up. And it's really exciting to be part of something like that.
Oh, interesting. So this, you're talking about your current role at Thrivent.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And which is, did you explain what Thrivent does?
Thrivent is basically a Fortune 500 company based out in the Midwest, and they service a lot of different products, but they're basically like a financial organization. So we work with a lot of advisors, and by working with advisors, we're trying to constantly get clients and prospects, but my team is focused on internal platforms and serving the advisors.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, it's very cool, like how it just so happened that your earlier initial role as a visual designer actually ended up helping you out with this recruiter. That's what stood out. That's what made you stand out amongst the sea of product designers out there.
Yeah, it's super helpful. Whenever I talk to some of my coworkers, they don't have like a more traditional like path into product design. They come from like different backgrounds, so it's really fun to kind of be part of that.
Yeah, and also there was you did a pivot internally within the company. There's like a common theme that we've noticed already, right? Awesome. Thanks so much, Saej.
I was a non-traditional heading into the industry. I had graduated from Adler University with my master's in counseling, specializing in sport and human performance. Initially, I was supposed to be on track to compete in Tokyo for the Paralympic Games, but I mean, due to the pandemic, everything changed for me. Everything changed, and so after a while, and I had worked in nonprofits previously, and I couldn't train judo. I reached out to a friend who was a contractor at Google and was doing accessibility testing. I myself am legally blind, and so I use a lot of assistive technology on a daily basis. And then I was able to be referred for my current position.
Oh, interesting. So to clarify, you started out as a contractor for accessibility testing.
That's right.
And then how long afterwards were you able to transition over?
So I was testing for a year, and then I was able to gain enough knowledge, and then also my personal experience as an end user to then go into my current role.
Oh, interesting. So there was a lot that you were able to learn during that year, and then you're like, oh, and you're doing such a great job.
Absolutely.
Have you? Yeah.
Yeah.
Another common thing, there's just so much that you learn. And you just don't learn in school, but it's vital for your position.
Oh,
right?
Hands down, absolutely. And I venture to say that even though I have a counseling degree, I use those skills every day.
Can you give me an example?
I think that a critical part of accessibility work, especially analysis, is the ability to listen to folks and what your clients need, not what they want, what they need. And so that requires active listening. And just like we're doing here, that communication is really important. And so during my time as a graduate student in counseling studies, we learned how to do that effectively.
So you emphasize not what you need, not want, right? So people will say that they're like, oh, I want this, but you kind of like figure out through your counseling training the underlying need that would actually benefit them.
Absolutely, and there's so many tools that even people around the globe aren't aware of, and so communication helps push that forward.
Oh man, I'm just imagining like among colleagues, particularly with like engineers who are often socially not the most adept folks. No offense, right? Like, oh wow, like there's some tools that they could, like if an engineer had some of these like basic listening skills, like how much of a benefit that could be. I mean, I don't want to just pick on engineers, but like just in general, right? Just better listening, communication, empathy would the team? Like, you don't have to name names of folks, but does that make any sense? What you said? Yeah.
To some degree, yeah. I mean, it really is a collaborative effort. It's not just accessibility analysts. We work with engineers. We work with product managers. We work amongst everybody. And so having that communication and making sure that it's transparent and honest, that's what pushes us forward as well.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, all very unique stories. It's definitely not like kind of like a typical story that you might hear about when you just read about like on a Reddit post on tech careers. Very cool. But I will note that we will leave time for Q&A, but I do want to circle back. Just let me know if you want on time. Right. So, thank you. So I'd like to circle back. There's some themes here. So I'm curious what you guys think. You all have very different roles, but what are some things that you find both? Yeah, if you touch upon. Let's start with things that you like enjoy about your job. What do you think that's especially in your, whether it's your team or your company that's set up well so that you really enjoy your work, and then some things, some challenges that you face. Feel free to emphasize one or the other. Let's start with you.
I would say a very common theme in the startup universe is that you're gonna have a lot of opportunity for ownership and autonomy. So if that's not really your jam, I feel like maybe startup culture might not be the best fit for you because there's an abundance of work to go around, there's so much to do. And so if you don't have that initiative or that desire even to get really your hands dirty and your feet wet, then I feel like it's gonna be a tough go for you in the startup world. But that's kind of what lights my professional heart alive, so to speak. So I would say that definitely does speak to one of the more favorite parts of my job is just the fact that there are so many ways to optimize processes and traditions that have been kind of stuck in older get-ups thus far. So I feel like if you're the kind of person who loves just optimizing for efficiency and figuring out ways to just kind of bridge over those gaps for improvement on a very regular basis, then program management honestly is a really great way for you to do that. Because again, if you're working in a startup environment, there's so many ways for you to kind of improve dusty processes from the ground up. So that's definitely one of the things that I prefer the most about my job. Some of the things I like less than that.
Wait, can I have some questions just based on, there's a lot there. So,
Yeah.
How would you, like in a nutshell, how would you describe, if you can, because I've heard the term program manager used different ways. How would you describe?
Yeah, I think it's
program
very
manager as?
particular to the industry that you might be a part of or the specific teams that you might be involved with as well. But for my job, on the day-to-day, basically, the program that I'm helping to manage is very niche and particular to my company. So my company, we help basically run this pre-accelerator program. So for anyone else who's not familiar with startups, startup accelerators are programs basically very condensed, very intense in terms of their speed and their rapidity for bringing founders together to help give them the business tools, knowledge, context that they need to really thrive with whatever business idea that they have. So my company, Bubble, does that specifically for historically BIPOC founders. So we're basically having candidates apply into this program, be part of it for 8 weeks straight, where they learn to use our company's tool, this drag and drop editor, for building their web app from scratch to basically help support their business, whatever idea that it might be.
Could you just expand on that acronym, the BIPOC?
Yeah, Black, Indigenous, people of color. So we're essentially targeting more marginalized folks who don't traditionally have access to tools and resources in the tech industry.
Oh, awesome, awesome. Okay, so there was that, and then you mentioned something about. There's a lot. So, yeah, is there an example? Thank you. Is there an example of where being at a startup, where you can just take ownership and be able to optimize things and have a lot of impact and influence in that way, that you were able to do that perhaps at a larger or more mature, big tech company might be more of a struggle. Like, does something, any example come to mind?
Yeah, you mean something that's a little bit more easily transferable from a smaller to a larger context?
Yeah, like, certainly like if there's a recent anecdote or is there something?
Yeah, I'm trying to think here because again, it is very unique to my experience having mostly been in the startup world. But I would say there are a lot of different processes, honestly, that you can be directly impacting when it comes to just making things a little bit more efficient. So for example, there are a lot of tech tools and platforms that are out there specifically geared towards productivity. So my team, we opt for using Asana for making sure that we're on tasks with all of our different responsibilities here and there. So I mean, if you have that skill set and you're bringing it towards a team that might not have that, that would be super applicable even in a larger company context for, again, just being that person to help facilitate that onboarding process for managing certain tools.
Yeah, yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, interesting. Well, since you said Asana,
Yeah.
Susanna started laughing. Oh. Yeah, Asana. That's like that's like an alternative.
Yeah.
right,
I would
yeah.
say so. Yeah.
My experience hasn't been great with it, but.
Oh, okay.
that's
Yeah, no, we
why,
have our hiccups too, but we're trying.
Okay. Cool. And then, you know what? Yeah, well, I'll circle back to anything. Yeah, let's move on to Susanna or Jangwoo. It's up to Monica. Yeah.
Are there any students here? I mean, we did ask how many are in tech, but I guess if you're a student, you're not in tech.
There should be at least one.
Oh, just one. Okay, two. Okay, I mean, I'm a recent grad, so I feel like I should be mentored by like all these people with experience, and the panelists. So maybe I'll just talk about like, as a recent grad, I feel like within software engineering, I mean, there are lots of subfields, but I think what's more important in that is that each field might be different in terms of like pros and cons. So I personally work on a super data intensive team. So our team makes, so we basically process search results and then make that into a very condensed vector of numbers, and it supports 100% of Google search signals. And so I think to kind of like connect that to what I liked about my job is just the amount of data that I get to analyze, because it's representative. I'm not only looking into a certain slice of Google search results, I'm looking at every slice. We have like a tool where we can analyze based on the slice. But that's also kind of what I don't like about my current position, because we work on top of like petabytes of data. You can't just run a simple command and like do simple analysis on data. You need to write a distributed processing pipeline and then like run it in the data center if you do want to analyze the entire data set. So that if you work on a super data intensive and like the data that you're working on is large, as maybe a lot of the data sets at Google, you won't be really getting that immediate response. So if you're more of a learner who learns from trial and error, that might not be your thing. Just to kind of connect a piece of like my personal experience working on such data intensive teams.
So that sort of trial and error iteration that you want, how long would that be? How long?
It really depends, but there are pipelines that would take like 48 hours, and we run on like 20K computers in the data centers. Yeah, so definitely not immediate at all. So, I've been on more product side teams where you work on front end things, and like more like user interface.
Certainly in Instagram shopping, right?
Both at Google and Instagram.
And what was the one at Google that you were was more user facing?
Yes, it's basically it was a team where we use Google search signals to determine when we have good results for your query, and if we don't, we kind of interfere with UI interventions. So let's say like you search something and like the basic example is you search something and we don't have any good search results, and you see like a UI that says, oh, we don't have any good results, but we have like a dozen of different variations of those. So yeah, so those two teams that I was on during my internships, they were very full stack, meaning you also get to do a lot of like the back end work, but also some front end work. So I guess that could be like in the middle of the spectrum. Whereas now I work on a super back end team where I work with petabytes of data, and the iteration cycle is definitely slower. And I think so. Yeah, being on a data intensive team, it's nice that you get to work on at such a scale, but also the iteration cycle is slower. So I would say that's my favorite, at least.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And how big is that team, your current team?
Yeah, so about 20 people work on our product. Yeah, and the third is in Mountain View, third is in
Search AI.
Search AI is like an organization.
Oh,
So yeah,
what's the name of the product then?
it's Rankebet, but it's internal. It's an internal product.
it's
yeah.
internal
So it's
product.
a search signal that we use within Google.
I see.
Yeah.
I see. And there's 20 people, and then it takes 48 hours to run this
Right.
petabyte processing.
Right. So it naturally kind of evolves into you need to do more context switching because you can't really work on a specific task for like a day. You would have to juggle multiple projects at once because you start a pipeline and then you need to wait like 24 to 48 hours for that to finish. So I think that's
So typically, how much would you juggle? Why wait for 48 hours?
I'd say like on average maybe like 3 projects at
Three
once.
projects?
Maybe 3.5, and then but
3.5.
right. So it's more like I actively work on 3, and half is just I like participate and
Half of it someone else's. Kind of
Right.
Your slap then.
yes. Yeah. Everything's about like language models now. I think at least like the trend is, and I don't know if I should say this. We're also working a lot on language models, so it's a lot of
Big
collaboration. It's a lot of collaborative efforts. Yeah, so I think there are certain traits that would depend on the field/team that you work on, such as like iteration cycle. But I think, let's say like collaboration, it would completely I don't think that would depend on the field, like per se. So yeah, I mean there are teams that are more isolated to themselves within like the language modeling space. Yeah, so I kind of wanted to touch.
Awesome. Yeah, that was very in depth. Thank you for explaining. All right, now let's go to Susanna. I'll also repeat the question.
I'm just so into everyone's story that
Yeah,
I'm
me
just
too.
like,
I have to remember my question. So yeah, like what are some things that you feel like, whether it's at the team level or at the company level, where it makes you really enjoy your, you could talk about the culture, where you feel like you're really set up to enjoy your work and really it's a positive experience. And then if you want, like just touching upon the opposite side of that, what challenges you face.
Sure, thanks for repeating that. I think my favorite part about just like being in a product team is the collaboration aspect. There's a lot of opportunities to really connect with your coworkers, but while working with them, you kind of understand how everyone operates a little differently, and then just working through that is like an interpersonal relationship that you're working on, so I really appreciate that aspect of it. But together you're essentially creating an experience. So I'm on the like design, like visual aspect, but on the other side, like my developers are actually building what I've designed. So there's a lot of communication that goes between it.
How many developers are on your team?
So my team, I'm
What's the general
under,
makeup?
so we have about 3 to 4 different portfolios within the product space, and we're all focused on different aspects. So my portfolio is targeting like the discovery space of having clients come to us, but then within that we have 4 pods, which is a very new teamwork as of recent. So on my pod, I have about 3 developers, but it used to be So we all used to work on one product and then we split up.
Oh, okay. It was,
Yeah.
it was a split that caused the 7 to 3 developers.
Yes, so we have different focuses now where I'm focused mostly on prospecting now. So we've already created the internal tool for our advisors and now we're out and designing a front-facing prospecting tool.
What's prospecting?
If you're not already a client, you're like a prospect client.
Oh, yeah, duh.
And that's-
Okay, right.
No, it wasn't very clear. But basically just like the whole process of this like experience making is my favorite. My least favorite would have to be the waiting because there's a lot of waiting when you put out a product and having like consumers like actually use the product, get feedback. You have to have it in more of like an organic flow. You can't like shove it in front of people and be like, tell us what you like about it, tell us what you don't like about it. So I think the part where it requires a lot of patience is just waiting for feedback, and that feedback is so valuable. Like as a designer, I'm always wanting to improve the product. So the waiting part is not as fun, but once we get a lot of like insightful feedback, applying it is also another like cycle of that.
So how, when you, so this is when you talk about, like, you don't like the waiting, you're talking about once a product, it has launched,
Yeah.
it's out, there's a period where you have to collect feedback that takes time for it to get to you.
Yeah,
Right.
so once a product is out live, we're in this like weird waiting phase, but we're also like picking up other products as well. So while you're in the planning stage, you're also waiting, but then as you move forward on these two different products parallel, you're kind of adding more work if feedback comes in. So it's a little bit of like a fun dance and balancing both.
Is there a way to speed up that, do you feel like it's just the nature of the space that you're in where that feedback iteration is, it takes a long, the cycles are long? Or is it like you think there's like just more of a process thing in terms of how feedback is taken?
I think we value organic feedback, so we're not trying to like force it down on people or like send out a bunch of surveys to the people who are using our products and being like, hey, what are your thoughts here? Mostly we have like internally, because it's being used, we have an inbox that a lot of advisors will like email us if they have like points of feedback, or if something's really working out for them, they'll give us a shout, and we internally celebrate those wins, but also if there are points of feedback, we go back and try to iterate on that.
Oh, interesting. So you then, okay, so you mentioned that currently in your pod it's working on prospecting. So you're the only designer?
Yes, I'm the designer.
And then there are 3 developers?
Yeah.
Okay, and is it really just you 4 who interact the most?
Yeah, so it's like we have like a scrum master and it's the product owner, and then I work really closely with my manager and the PM. So we work on different streams of work.
So you're saying that there's a scrum master, separately a product manager, and then your manager.
Yeah. And then a product owner. So there's a lot of people.
Oh wow! So half the people are like kind of building it, like so it's you and the developers, and there's another half of the team that's like quote unquote managing.
Yeah, they're having like the conversations that we don't want to have. So with stakeholders, they're just fighting our battles for us, and we're just doing.
Interesting. Very cool. Thank you.
I would have to say my favorite part of my role is when product teams are proactive about accessibility. They already know what it is, and I don't have to explain. Accessibility is about inclusion, right? It's not just me, a person who identifies as having a disability, but it could be your mom or your dad. For example, my dad has Parkinson's, and that was developed, like, we found out about it a couple years ago. So to know that I'm doing something that makes that kind of impact for folks across the globe is so meaningful. It's a huge impact, even though our team is a team of 3, right? Like 3 people can still create a huge impact. On the other side of the coin, something that I find frustrating is when we have to go through the motions of explaining what accessibility is because people just didn't think of it from the get-go. But that provides a learning opportunity for us to explain what that is and how it can be beneficial to everyone.
Okay, I'm going to sound super ignorant. So,
It's
because
okay.
like I also did not know what an accessibility analyst is, which is why I wanted you to come and
Sure, absolutely.
explain this. Yeah, can you just kind of give like, yeah, high level maybe like an example of a project that you worked on recently, or anything that you're proud of or you feel comfortable sharing?
Sure, absolutely. So there is a feature within Chrome called Reading Mode, and it basically allows users to see a more simplified version of the web page. And it definitely affects myself as a low vision technology user in that it's just the text. There's no advertisements. If you're looking at a standard Wikipedia page, there isn't all this different coloration. They make it completely so that contrast is important, line spacing is important. It's accessible using a screen reader, things of that nature.
Oh, interesting. And by the way, so you said you work with, so on your team there are 2 other people,
That's right.
right? And so do they help out with like other aspects of
Oh,
accessibility?
hands down, absolutely. I'm so fortunate and grateful to be a part of the team that I'm on. They help me learn every day. I'm learning every day because, like I said, I don't have a background in technology other than being an end user. So I'm learning every day.
Okay. Yeah, but in general, it is like more vision focused.
Not necessarily.
Yeah.
We work on everything accessibility related. So, for example, if you're using an Android phone and you have mobility issues or dexterity issues in your hands, there's something called voice control, and you can use your phone with your voice. We test all those things.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so there's audio aspects to it as well.
So many.
Tactile, I
Yep.
assume, right?
We work with braille displays, switch devices.
There's braille display.
That's a whole other thing we could talk about. Braille displays essentially are refreshable dots, and it's one line at a time, but we're hoping to get more improved displays.
Whoa, wait, I want to understand this. Wait, so you're saying that there's a device where it'll like, the braille will pop up?
Exactly, yeah.
This exists?
It does, yeah. There's so much, I mean, if you're looking at a standard braille book, for example, the first Harry Potter book, if you had it embossed and in hard copy, it would be a 7-volume set. Whereas if you're using a braille display, you can read it line by line, but you're using one singular device.
Oh, very cool. I didn't know about this. Does anyone? Yeah.
It's
Mind
super cool
blowing.
stuff.
Yeah, that's super cool. I also read this book called, by the way, especially any of you engineers out there, it's a really great book called, I believe it's called Code. And you heard about this? Okay, all right. That's probably doesn't have great SEO. So, but it talks about like actually like how computing and information relates to the invention of Braille, like the person who made it, the French gentleman. It's very much based on like underneath it. There's information. Anyways, I was just told by my coordinating partner that we have it is 6:48. Wow, yes, we dove really deep in here. There's so much to explore. There's so many questions, but I'm gonna have to save it because I do want anyone in the audience who has questions for any of our panelists have a chance to ask them as well. Of course, we do have a session afterwards where we can all mingle, but if you want to share it, it's going to be recorded apparently. So yeah, I want to open it up. So yeah, what we can do is just show of hands, just raise your hand if you have a question for any of our panelists. Just yeah, and we'll pass around the mic.
Hi, my name is Nancy. It's my first time attending this session, and it's been very insightful. Thank you so much for sharing your stories. I was just curious, with the rapid development of technology, like the boom of AI tools, how do you feel like your responsibilities for your role are changing because of these developments? Could you maybe talk about opportunities and threats?
Okay, I feel like you and I are kind of speaking the same language then. I would say, yeah, I think the advent of certain iterations of technology like AI are super important, and conversations definitely need to be held about that. But it specifically pertains to my work as a program manager because, again, as I mentioned earlier, the program that I help manage is specifically targeting underrepresented, marginalized users, right? Especially entrepreneurs. So actually, AI is super interesting, specifically when it comes to my company's tool, which is a drag and drop no code editor. Because again, we already have that angle of accessibility when it comes to democratizing technology for folks, especially who don't have the means to learn how to code, right? So AI is super interesting, especially when it comes to my day-to-day, because the program actually becomes a lot more accessible than it was before in its mission, because we can target folks who, again, might even struggle to learn a no-code tool to be able to use AI to actually develop a landing page in 3 minutes, for example. So that's something that my company, Bubble, is specifically targeting in the current day and age, because AI, of course, is a hot button issue, it's a buzzword, so you can't really avoid it no matter what. But we're trying to get at the forefront of that movement to make sure that we're opening up the ease of accessibility for technology as much as possible. And again, for underrepresented programs like mine, I think it makes a huge, massive difference when it comes to people who can start their own businesses using technology like AI.
Do you use AI in like your work, the work that you do?
Do you have particular examples maybe of program management related work?
So you talked about how like your company and like the opportunities that your company has, it's changing with AI.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering if you adapt and you're using AI.
Great question. So again, this is a work in progress when it comes to my company's tool, but it's something that we are prioritizing. So there is a team specifically dedicated to incorporating AI functionality into our no-code product. So we're aiming to, at some point later this year, to launch basically a version of our product that you can build an MVP within 10 minutes, for example. So we can use that to incorporate that into the curriculum that we already offer to our program candidates, so that their overall experience using a tool like ours is even easier than it was before. So this is definitely at the forefront of our minds actually when it comes to developing our program and making it better for future cohorts.
Thanks, awesome. Actually, I'm curious, Saej, if you have a perspective on this. So yeah, she hand the mic to her.
I definitely think there's going to be a huge impact. I'm going to give a short story because I used AI specifically as someone who is visually impaired. I was hearing a buzzing sound in my apartment, and for folks who can see, you can identify if it's a fly or a bee or whatever the case may be. But as a visually impaired person, I didn't know what it was. So by using my phone and taking a photo of said potential buzzing insect, I was able to identify that it was actually a hornet in my apartment. And I live on the 5th floor, so this is very strange. But because of that capability, I was able to assess how I would tackle the situation. So I think things like image description, using dictation, those are a couple of the things that AI would definitely impact.
Oh wow, hornet. Wait, so what did you do?
You know, it could still be there, but I think I think that I was able to shoot it out using a piece of paper. But admittedly,
You shoot it out with a piece of paper?
somehow, yeah, like I used a piece of paper to like kind of waft said hornet. I'm like, please leave. I had a window open and I didn't hear the buzzing anymore. So I'm presuming it's gone, but my dog doesn't care about bugs or pests, so I don't know if it's still there or not, if I'm being honest.
Awesome, cool. Yeah, Susanna, as a designer, product designer, do you use AI tools? Any thoughts on that?
I'm gonna be so honest with you, AI freaks me out, so I have not used it. I know it's a hot take, but I know I read about it, and that's why I'm freaked out, naturally.
So just reading about it freaks you out?
Yeah.
So you haven't tried it?
No.
Have you heard of Midjourney?
No.
You should check out Midjourney. Actually, don't, never mind. Never mind.
No. But, well, from what I can Figma is like the primary tool that we use, and I know they're like starting to incorporate AI into it, but as like a team member at my company we're not there yet. So I think it really depends on where you are in the stage of what product you're trying to create. So we're catering towards a lot of like middle-aged Midwesterners, and I think AI would probably equally freak them out as it does me. So we're taking smaller incremental steps on improving some of their products. So it's not yet in my day-to-day, but moving forward, who knows? Maybe my thoughts on it might change and I might incorporate it, but not yet.
What are you most freaked out? Because I'm sure other people are freaked out too. Like, is it data from a, like a data privacy perspective? Is it that it'll replace your job? Like, what is it? It'll become sentient? What is it?
The last part, but I don't think it will replace like designer jobs just yet, because you lose a lot of like the human touch when it comes to design, and if you're relying on AI to kind of create this experience that's catered for people, you kind of miss like the human part of it. So I'm not worried too much about that. But I don't know, AI is kind of, it's a fun topic. Like Monica said, it's a buzzword. I try not to associate myself too much with it. But I can see it as a really helpful tool.
Okay, thank you. I'd love to get Jangwoo's thoughts on this too, because I know there are engineers out in this audience, because I know them. So yeah, I'm curious. As someone who works at Google,
Right.
working on, language.
I work very closely to language models and LLMs. I guess just like like one of the things that I observe and like insights that I could share is that after we have all of like the public attention on LLMs and also the resources, certain companies are kind of almost like very actively encouraged to build these large language models, which are very expensive to train, meaning like even from like the data preparation side of things, and like you actually have to train them, which has its compute cost. So I think the general
And
trend
when
is
we
that
talk about cost, we're talking about like what scale, how many millions? You have a sense?
I was told that it's like billions of dollars for training a single model. But I mean, that's like, it varies completely. It could be if you're a 10 billion parameter model, it would completely depend. We don't really have like a definition of what's large language model and which one's like medium-sized language models, right? Right. But I think the general consensus is that it is expensive. But now we have them. So what's going to happen? Generally speaking, we have this super large language model that we just dump so much data that it has a really good understanding of general knowledge. And because of that, instead of previously kind of training and making multiple models that have more specific purposes and functionalities, now we consolidate a lot of those smaller models and just fine-tune the large language model. So however, I don't know exactly how that would apply to all the different fields. Right, but generally speaking, that means domain expertise is going to be more important. I'm mostly talking about like from a data perspective, because there's only a handful of companies who that have the resources to make these large language models. So the rest of the industry, it's going to be mostly fine-tuning, and it's really going to be about the data and like the talent that you have in a specific domain, and not really about every company having their own language model. So I think that might be different from what's advertised, in the news, and what the general, public consensus could be.
I see. So what you're saying is that you see a future where, like, just because of the sheer costs that's required to train, let alone like hire the top experts for a generalized kind of working towards general artificial intelligence, that's going to still be limited to like a few like select companies like Google or OpenAI, but you do see the possibility of like smaller companies that have their own specialized, domain specialized, data trained large language models as a service.
Right. So you could kind of think of it as like you have a super smart person, and then instead of just using it and asking really specific questions, you teach the person with the field that you work in, and like whatever the person needs to learn about within the more of like a specific, less general knowledge space. And fine tuning is much cheaper than actually building a large language model from scratch. Yeah, so I think if you work in a data
taking something like
space,
Llama 3, taking like an existing large language model, you're not inventing something brand new, but you're just doing tuning on something that's already.
you're training over the general large language model.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, I think what could be relevant is that if you work in the data space or any type of a more niche area within like AI or a product that adapts AI, that I think would be a general trend based on.
Two questions, and I promise it's over. I know. Do you use LLMs like for your work, and like do you feel secure in your? And how do you feel about the development of LLMs? Like how safe do you feel in your job?
Well, we have an internal version that anything that we put into our internal, like Google internal Gemini model, doesn't go back into training data. So whatever we put in is not going into training data that the publicly available Gemini model wouldn't have. Because like people could like copy and paste the entire presentation or whatever, and then yeah.
You have like your own version of the Ultra. That's
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Very cool. Okay. We're out of time actually. So I'm sorry. That was one great question though. But we'll be around. So please feel free to ask our panelists questions. And yeah, let's give a hand to them. Yeah.
We're hoping to have more events like this, so if you have ideas, come talk to me. My name is Ketsia. I'm the community coordinator here at CAGNY, so feel free to come talk to me. I'll give you my email, and if you have ideas for events or ideas for how this event and events like this could be better, we also have a QR code with a survey that we would really appreciate you guys filling out in 1 to 2 minutes. Yes, that'll help us, because if you were like, wow, this event was trash, we want to know. And if you were like, wow, that was great, except I really wish that there was more alcohol. I don't know. Just whatever you want to say, we'll take it into account. So I put the QR codes back there on the tables where we'll be eating. And I will also post them maybe on a PowerPoint up here and possibly in the elevator so you can't miss it. Yeah. So thank you so much again. Let me just make sure I didn't miss anything. Oh yes, we are the biggest Korean American association in this general area. We cover New Jersey, New York, and Connecticut. This year marks our 64th anniversary, actually, so we're going to have our birthday party on June 12th. If you guys are free, it's a morning engagement, but there will be food. We always have a lot of food, so if you're hungry, come to us. We'll be like your mom or your grandma. If you're not from here, we're going to feed you, and then you can be cool people. So thank you so much to our wonderful panelists and Lester and you all.
Thank you, Betsy. You did so much.